It may not look like it now, but Winterhold was once the capital of Skyrim. This crumbling, depopulated, glorified village was once an extensive, thriving city. But by the events of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, those glory days have long since gone, as has most of the city in fact. And I'm not just talking about the populace, for in the 122nd year of the Fourth Era, Winterhold was at the epicenter of a tragedy that saw much of its urban sprawl catastrophically plummet into the Sea of Ghosts, a disaster those who remain are yet to recover from 8 decades later. This event would come to be remembered as the Great Collapse, and while its consequences were devastating, its cause isn't definitively understood. But at the heart of the destruction sits the College of Winterhold unaffected. As the city around them crumbled, this institution of mages remained perfectly intact. It's logical to conclude that something unnatural kept it from plummeting into the sea, along with the rest of the city, and this has led many among the distrustful Nords to believe that the college might have had something to do with it. Did they? Or perhaps might there be some weight to the college's counter-explanation? Or perhaps the true cause of the Great Collapse is something altogether different. Join me as we bid to get to the bottom of this mystery. What caused the Great Collapse? Now, it's worth noting before we begin that Winterhold is not utterly derelict. The city itself is, for the most part, mostly gone. However, it is still occupied by a small group of inhabitants. If we exclude the members of the college from the head count and strictly discuss the residents of the town itself, Winterhold is pathetically populated with a handful of residents and some guards. It's noticeably depopulated even if we take into consideration the fact that Skyrim as seen in the game is massively scaled down. And for those who remain, business most certainly is not booming. Unless one comes for the college, there's very little reason to come here at all. This is possibly the most miserable settlement in Skyrim. It's easy enough to fathom why.
I'm afraid there's not much to be said. Winterhold is hardly what it used to be. You can talk to Birna if you need to buy anything. She doesn't have much, but could certainly use the coin. And then there's our little inn. Most of the business we get is from folks here to visit the college, though even that's dried up some.
You mean the inn or Winterhold? Suppose it's the same answer either way. Winterhold's fallen on hard times, to say the least. Most folk packed up and left years ago. A few of us are either too stubborn or too crazy to go, so we do our best to make a living. Very little money passes through Winterhold anymore. But if there's one thing you can count on, it's folks needing a drink now and then.
The Jarl himself is the best example of the perpetual foul mood that overhangs this place.
What's there to tell? It's mostly gone now, thanks to those damned mages in the college. Someday there'll be proof they caused the Great Collapse. Most of a city just dropping off into the sea. That doesn't just happen.
While it's implied Jarl Korir lacks the evidence to prove definitively the college is behind the Great Collapse, he believes they were. This makes him distrustful of newcomers because everybody always comes for the college.
Should have known. Not that it matters anymore. No one bothers coming to Winterhold for any other reason.
While we're here, we can probe him for more information on his disdain for the college. He will say the following should we ask him if he has a problem with the College of Winterhold.
I do. And if you count yourself among their numbers, then you've blood on your hands as well. There's nothing left of Winterhold. Nothing. Everyone knows it's the college's fault that the sea swallowed our city. Still they deny it. What? We all know the truth.
The Jarl is convincing in his convictions. Characteristic of a Nord of his stature, he is less than trustful of mages, and likely before his time his entire city fell into the sea one day. Yet despite being at the epicenter of that disastrous chaos, an institution of mages conveniently remains steadfast. That won't challenge his traditional beliefs, rather play into a confirmation bias. But not all of Winterhold are convinced the College of Winterhold were behind it.
I'm afraid the Winterhold you see before you is somewhat underwhelming. I can assure you, though, that it was quite something in its prime. An early capital of Skyrim, you know. Sadly, the Oblivion Crisis took its toll on Winterhold, in more ways than one. Then, the Great Collapse swallowed most of our beloved city.
The Great Collapse? What's that?
Just about 80 years ago, there was a terrible disaster. The cliffs overlooking the Sea of Ghosts collapsed, taking most of Winterhold with them. In the middle of it all, the college was practically untouched. Many of the survivors were suspicious. Some believed the mages were behind the whole thing, and others felt they could have at least prevented it. Archmage Varen assures me that his people had nothing to do with it, and I believe him. But Winterhold never recovered.
So is the college dangerous?
Goodness, no. They're simply scholars. They mean no one harm. I've had several conversations with Archmage Varen over the years. Oh, he's perfectly polite, if a bit guarded.
Kraldar suggests to us that the general suspicion among the locals vary from believing the college caused the Great Collapse to believing they clearly could have prevented it, and the evidence for that stands in stone facing the people of Winterhold every day. And this belief that they were somehow involved in the Great Collapse, or perhaps even weren't involved enough, didn't manifest over the years since like a conspiracy theory, rather was suspected by the locals of Winterhold from the very beginning, as documented by the in-game book on the Great Collapse, which details correspondence between the Archmage at the time and the Jarl of Winterhold. And here's what it has to say. To the esteemed Jarl, Valdemar of Winterhold. First, please allow me to offer my most sincere condolences. I understand that you, like many others, have lost family, and you have my deepest sympathies. I also understand that some on your council have placed the blame for this horrible disaster on my colleagues at the college. While I can certainly appreciate the shock at the scope of recent events and the desire to comprehend what has happened, I must strongly urge you to consider the full situation. You know, as well as any, the college's history and reputation in Winterhold. It has long been a source of pride for your city, a unique fixture in Skyrim. Some of the greatest wizards have studied here, and the college has always promoted positive relations with the other provinces of Tamriel. It is well known that those relations have been, shall we say, strained over the last few decades. After the Oblivion Crisis, it was only natural that the people of Skyrim showed a distrust for mages, even though the vast majority of us actively worked to counter the actions of the Mythic Dawn cult. The college expected such a reaction, and hoped that distrust would fade over time. And then, the Red Year. No one foresaw the explosion of Red Mountain, or the devastating effect it would have on the Dunmer culture. Your predecessor was kind enough to welcome many of the refugees, particularly those who contribute to the college's studies. We were quite grateful. When Solstheim was generously offered to the Dunmer as a new home, I was as surprised as any. I did not, however, share the apparent expectation that all Dark Elves would leave Skyrim. It did not go unnoticed that many in Winterhold were unhappy at how many mages chose to stay at the college rather than relocate. And now, the storms that have racked the coast of Skyrim for close to a year have finally broken, but at great cost to us all. The great collapse that has devastated Winterhold was unexpected, I assure you. That the college remained unaffected is only a testament to the protective magics placed around it so long ago. It in no way implies that we were somehow prepared specifically for this event, and is certainly no indication that the college was somehow responsible. I certainly would never hold you accountable for the gossip spread among the people of Winterhold. I would urge you, though, not to allow that gossip to take root and become a commonly held belief. I do not wish to see our relationship crumble like Winterhold has. As I assure you, the college will remain here a very, very long time. Your persistent advocate, Archmage Daneth. So what we learn from this is the Great Collapse appears to have occurred as part of a broader event, including violent storms crashing against the coast for around a year, which might lend a rational, entirely explainable, natural explanation for the Great Collapse. Violent storms simply eroded the rock beneath Winterhold and ripped it away. This explanation would make sense, especially when you look at the geology of the region. The area both at sea and on land is dominated by glaciers, and these glaciers run fairly close to where the remains of Winterhold are. The bits still standing are situated on stone, but if much of what fell into the sea was situated on ice, those parts of the city would have been on borrowed time anyway, and almost a year's worth of storms would believably have catastrophic consequences. Saltwater unceasingly battering stone is also not known to be ideal, but it's much sturdier and would therefore be a considerably slower process, whereas a structurally unsound glacier will collapse spectacularly. I'm not sure about the value of applying my poor understanding of geography to a fantasy universe, but I am saying it's plausible that much of Winterhold just fell into the ocean. And if parts of Winterhold were stacked on now non-existent glacial ice, surrounding ruins do suggest that ancient Nords have done that before. But if that's what caused the collapse, how come structures like the ancient Nord ruins of Sky Temple, built on a plateau of ice, are still there and Winterhold isn't? Furthermore, if the weather was the problem in general, how come the College of Winterhold's explanations for what happened go as follows?
No one is sure of the cause. Some believe the eruption of Red Mountain had far-reaching consequences that were only felt years later. I know there are some who have blamed the college, said that we were responsible. I assure you this is not the case.
Mages tend to double up as scholarly in other spheres of knowledge. If the cause of the Great Collapse was as simple as a barrage of inclement weather, I have a feeling they would know for certain. But the Archmage claims nobody knows for certain. Yet he claims to be certain the college didn't cause it, and cites far-flung consequences of the eruption of the Red Mountain. The Red Mountain erupted in the 5th year of the 4th era, which became known as the Red Year. The Great Collapse occurred in the 122nd year of the 4th era. That's 117 years later. Sure, the Red Mountain is still spewing ash into the atmosphere. I'm sure that causes its fair share of complications even 2 centuries after its eruption. But an entire city dropping into the ocean 117 years later as a consequence seems a tad dramatic considering the time difference between these two disasters. It's also a convoluted explanation when the Sea of Ghosts around this time, according to accounts, came alive.
The Sea of Ghosts practically came alive. No one was expecting it. Monstrous waves battered the shore for weeks on end. Winterhold was ancient and weathered, but it couldn't withstand the sea's fury. Entire districts of the city were lost overnight. The waves receded in time, but the damage was irreversible. Most residents of Winterhold abandoned what was left of the city. The college survived, and so here we remain.
If we take the Archmage's word as the words of the college as an institution, then the college, despite being clueless as to what actually caused the Great Collapse, either believe they weren't involved at all, or simply want to. Because while there's no definitive proof the college was involved in any way, I find it very hard to believe everyone on site would steadfastly believe there isn't the remotest possibility somebody at the College of Winterhold might have had something to do with it. As a broader institution, I'm doubtful they would deliberately mean Winterhold harm. After all, having a town, or even a city, right outside surely poses more benefits than it has drawbacks. But the college's official views and ideals, and that of its seniority, may not align with everybody under its roof. The college is not bound together by any form of stringent policy. Its members do not share the same ideals and principles. The only thing drawing them to Winterhold is the pursuit of knowledge. And it's drilled into us repeatedly upon arrival here that there's plenty of leeway for wayward experiments provided we keep it discreet. I don't wish to give Skyrim's writing too much credit, but I do believe the college coming across as somewhat negligent is deliberate. It doesn't take as much to learn about missing apprentices, all of whom can be found out in the wilderness of Skyrim having died horribly. Lesson 2 as an apprentice under Tolfdir takes us to an ancient Nord crypt where we're sent to spring traps and contend with the undead. And upon reporting the mysterious power found within Sarthal back to the Archmage, he'll open with this.
Please don't tell me that another one of the apprentices has been incinerated. I have enough to deal with right now.
I don't know why, but I have a feeling misadventures are very common here. There's even cut content that can be restored through the mod Cutting Room Floor, where Tolfdir sends us on damage control missions to deal with rogue wizards. So we have a negligent institution with a tendency to admit lunatics, and don't get me started on the man converted into a glowing orb of power in the basement, yet we're supposed to believe there isn't the slightest possibility that the Great Collapse was caused by something that occurred within the college. I'm not arguing liability, but rather the idea it's that easy to dismiss when the true cause of the Great Collapse is not understood is preposterous. The College of Winterhold is hardly known for its stringent rules.
Purposely killing your fellow college members is a bad idea. I'd advise against it. Theft and assault can get you into trouble as well. As for research, well, a sufficient explanation will cover almost anything. If you're going to need live test subjects for your experiments, it's easier to do that off of college grounds.
From what we're told, the rules effectively boil down to if your experiments are unethical, the less we know about it the better. How can they be certain one among them didn't do something utterly insane? They have apprentices turning their colleagues into cows in the dorm rooms. They have tutors who take a peculiar liking to watching their students sleep. And most importantly, a seemingly endless assortment of alienated or otherwise rogue former members, some of whom are bonkers and others known to be dabbling in particularly powerful magic, and there are instances where both appear to be true at the same time. It's one hell of an accomplishment to drop a multiple millennia-old city into the ocean, but I have a suspicion the College of Winterhold possesses both the collective talent and collective negligence for this disaster to be the consequences of an experiment. And if the hierarchy of the College of Winterhold at the time knew this, it's not like they lacked for reasons to cover it up. Firstly, I don't think the college care to officially be associated with a disaster that puts their presence in Skyrim at odds with the rest of the province. Following the Oblivion Crisis, distrust for mages in Skyrim in particular was high. It mattered very little if most mages were not aligned with the Mythic Dawn cult. In short, a mage should not be eager to feed a Nord an excuse to hate them. And we know that try not to upset the locals has become something of an unofficial College of Winterhold policy. If it came out with certainty the college was absolutely involved in the events that resulted in the Great Collapse, I'm sure the locals' bitterness would turn to outright hostility. So they may be keeping quiet to avoid another disaster. After all, the dwindling residents of Winterhold are not prepared to take on and expel the college. But in vindicating the focal point of resentment, there is an elevated risk you can kiss rationale goodbye. But a calculated approach to possibly withholding the truth isn't evidence. At the same time, I'd argue Kraldar's "Trust me mate, the Archmage is sound" isn't definitive proof that the college were not involved, and the idea of the Great Collapse being the result of an eruption that occurred 117 years prior, while not entirely impossible, seems a bit late onset. Were I to look anywhere for an explanation, I'd be less concerned with a historical volcanic eruption, and more interested in the curiously intact college full of mages who have a proven interest in interfering with things they perhaps shouldn't, at the epicenter of that very disaster. I gather that it's meant to be another example of the Nord's distrust of mages, and by extension the elves who typically dominate those ranks, but the college's involvement in the Great Collapse is genuinely curious, and the game even points this out in a loading screen. I'm not implying there was an institution-wide conspiracy. I'm not even implying the College of Winterhold condoned the actions that may or may not have led up to the Great Collapse. I am, however, suggesting the answer might lie within. Sort of. Maybe all we need do is find the appropriate thread and pull on it. Maybe that journey begins not within the college itself, but atop a mountain overlooking it, at this massive shrine of the Daedric prince, Azura. It's here where one of her devout followers will send us on a journey to retrieve Azura's star from a mage named Malyn.
You must go to a fortress, endangered by water, yet untouched by it. Inside, you will find an elven mage who can turn the brightest star as black as night. It is cryptic, I know, but Azura's signs are never wrong. I believe the fortress may refer to Winterhold. Ask if they know this elven enchanter.
This path leads us to Nelakar in the inn in Winterhold, who tells us this about the man we seek.
Who sent you? Was it the college? The Jarl? We agreed there would be no more questions. Azura. Gods, it's all finally coming back to haunt me. What do you know about soul gems?
They're for enchanting, correct?
They are, except the gem is always consumed. They're frail, except for one. Azura's star. A Daedric artifact that allows any number of souls to pass through it. Some of us wanted to find out how. I was working under Malyn Varen then. If only we knew what he was really planning.
What did Malyn do?
Malyn wanted to alter the star. He was dying. Disease. He thought he could store his own soul inside. Become immortal. It drove him mad. Students started dying. Eventually, the college exiled him. He took a few loyal disciples to Illinalta's Deep and vanished.
How did the Daedra drive Malyn insane?
Azura is no ordinary Daedra. She commands an entire realm inside of Oblivion. The more Malyn worked on the star, the more she was able to damn him. It started slowly at first. Malyn would see things that weren't there. Then he would yell at students over words they hadn't said. Then one day I walked in and Malyn had killed a student, and in a horrific moment of inspiration, he started using her soul for his work.
It sounds like Malyn got what was coming to him.
The college would agree with you. But do you have any idea how many innocent lives were cut short, just so Azura could have revenge?
That last comment sounds like it's referring to more than just the odd kill. Before we piece anything together though, perhaps we should venture forth to Illinalta's Deep, and see what else we can find out about this Malyn. From the outside, the first thing noteworthy about this fortress is the fact that it's sunken in the water. I'm sure there are plentiful, rational, natural explanations for this, even if it wasn't built to be this way. But it's the discoveries we'll make within that make it seem unnatural. Upon entering the fortress through a hatch, we're greeted by the visage of a fellow who looks like he could really do with a strepsil. And by that I mean, he's a skeleton. He's obviously been here for a while, and has been chained up as something of a warning, but what's interesting is what's found in the knapsack at his feet. A fisherman's journal that reads as follows. A decent catch of fish is getting harder to come by. Without a good spot soon, I don't think we'll survive the next winter, so I'm travelling further south, towards Lake Illinalta. Folks say it's cursed. Whole Imperial fort just sank into the water one day, and they say the ruins have been haunted since. When I asked, I got ghost stories, tales of people who went out near the lake and never came back. They say spirits haunt the hallways of the sunken fort and steal little children from their mothers' cribs. No amount of coin could convince any of the nearby villagers to guide me there, so I'm following the White River. Divines protect me. I hope the stories aren't true. This passage implies the fort didn't naturally subside into the lake. It just sank one day, inexplicably, and became a folk legend. And that latter part is important because it implies whatever happened that caused it to sink happened some time ago, much like how 8 decades prior to the events of the game, Winterhold just fell into the Sea of Ghosts one day. It's interesting that a disgraced member of the college supposedly now calls this place home. As for the people who tend to go missing around here, I think we can account for them. Malyn is using their souls. And sure enough, this place is packed to the brim with his disciples, and an abundance of skeletal remains we can only assume are those of his victims, some of which have been reanimated and enslaved by the mages here. As for Malyn, sure enough, he's here too. Well, sort of. The remains of his body are. His skeleton sits in a chair with the corrupted Azura's star surrounded by more unfortunate souls. By Malyn's bones we can find a book he penned, The Black Star, an achievement of magic over Daedra, by Malyn Varen, Master Enchanter. And here is what it has to say. Though some scoffed, some scorned at the very notion of experimenting on a Daedric artifact, I have succeeded where the ignorant and superstitious would not even dare to try. The Black Star, my achievement over the Daedric Lord Azura, a re-envisioning, a remastering of the ultimate soul gem. It shall become the vessel of my immortality, final proof that mortals can live as indefinitely as the denizens of oblivion, the visions, the voices that Azura has sent to taunt me. While some called me mad, I knew the truth. Nothing can be held sacred in the pursuit of advancing the very nature of magic itself. Let the Daedra send their foul images into my mind. They have given me the burning desire and unrelenting discipline to shut out all influence, all mortality. My disciples and I have built a new site, free of the prying eyes of those primitive minds in Winterhold, Fort Ilinalta. We had been conducting a few minor experiments before our exile, some of which led to the disruption of the island, but a few enchantments have kept the ruins intact, and beneath the waters of Lake Ilinalta has been the perfect place for the final phase of the Black Star. What catches my interest about this text is less to do with meddling with a Daedric artifact, and more focused on the notion that Ilinalta's deep is sunken as the result of an experiment performed by Malyn and his disciples. And while this next bit is interpretation of vague wording, it appears to allude to the idea that those experiments began back in Winterhold before they were exiled. Of course, it could mean they were performing experiments on Ilinalta's deep before they were forced to relocate here, but referring to experiments leading to the disruption of the island doesn't really make sense for Ilinalta's deep, because it's not on an island. It was on the shore of a lake, and now it's kind of in the lake. As for Winterhold, it may not constitute an island either, but it fits the description a bit better, especially now. Post the Great Collapse, you could argue the college is on an isle. It's primarily situated atop a big rocky plateau, but that plateau sits on a strip of land separated from the rest of the land by water. But more importantly, Malyn was conducting experiments before his exile from the College of Winterhold that resulted in the sinking of Fort Ilinalta. But you're right, it's one thing to sink a modest fort and another to drop an entire cliff-top city into the sea. But if the same experiment that resulted in the fort sinking into the water was far less refined, you could certainly fathom results being catastrophic on a good day. As for how the college did not share in such a fate, I'm inclined to believe such an ancient magical institution is protected by powerful magic baked into the stonework. After all, Archmage Deneth implies that, and it seems a bit like common sense. And I can't imagine Malyn, a man warped by the Daedra, an utterly insane lunatic, is going to spare much thought for those primitive minds in Winterhold. Therefore, the extent of the complications of his experiments that ultimately resulted in Ilinalta's deep sinking into the lake are only worth a passing mention to highlight the difficulty of accomplishing this. As for the enchantments that keep Fort Ilinalta intact despite now being partially submerged in the lake, perhaps that is the result of studying the protective magics at the College of Winterhold that enabled it to survive the unsurvivable. Other details about Malyn do raise some curious questions. Upon meeting him within Azura's star, we learn he's a Dunmer, and Dark Elves can live for centuries before we even start factoring magic. The fellow we question about him is an Altmer named Nelikar. They can also live for centuries. As for his fellowship at Ilinalta's Deep, the abundance of skeletonized remains suggests they've been here for quite some time indeed, and while this doesn't apply to all of them, many of their ranks are also Elven. But moreover, there are too many mages here for it to be the original group that were exiled from the college. I wouldn't be surprised if Malyn's little cult has had time to grow over the years. All that's left of Malyn's physical remains are bone as well. His soul has been within Azura's star for some time, While there's nothing that confirms the events regarding Malyn transpired at the same time as the Great Collapse, the game certainly makes hints that Malyn's descent into madness and experimentation occurred some time ago. Whether that's 8 decades worth is another question. But I think the most telling information about Malyn actually comes from Nelikar, for upon beginning inquiries he asks us this.
Who sent you? Was it the college? The Jarl? We agreed there would be no more questions.
Now, the college or the Jarl being interested in Malyn is neither here nor there. Nelikar's implication, however, is that both would be interested in him, and both have been in the past and agreed there would be no more questions, meaning there was a lot of questions, but about what? What could both parties be interested in finding out more about, either together or independently? I very much so doubt the Jarl loses sleep over crimes committed by college members against other college members on college grounds. This implies that Malyn's actions at one point or another directly affected the people of Winterhold. And that brings me back around to another thing that Nelikar says.
But do you have any idea how many innocent lives were cut short just so Azura could have revenge? We're nothing to the Daedra. Pawns to move around, praise and punish as they see fit.
It's clear that Nelikar attributes a lot of Malyn's misdeeds to Azura warping his mind, but in doing so, in blaming Azura, and noting how insignificant mortals are to the Daedra, he implies the death toll that resulted from Malyn's actions was very high, higher than just the occasional murder on college grounds. It sounds more like he's referencing a major disaster, one both the Jarl and College would be keen to get to the bottom of, and Winterhold most certainly had one of those. Could this be our explanation then? A rogue mage seeking to preserve his fragile life at all costs, destroying much of Winterhold in an offshoot experiment, later perfected elsewhere, to create the perfect layer within which he could alter a Daedric artifact against Azura's will. Only for the College of Winterhold at the time to cover it up so well that come the events of the game, the staff at the college truly believe they had nothing to do with it. And in fairness, that would technically remain the truth. The college technically did not cause the Great Collapse, but maybe Malyn on the college grounds did. And maybe the consequences of the Red Mountain eruption played a role here, weakening the foundations upon which Winterhold was built, only for the extent of that damage to be realised over a century later, when the sea practically came alive with irregular storms for up to a year, which may or may not be part of that experiment, that same experiment that sank Fort Ilinalta inside a day. There's no definitive proof of anything, but it certainly raises some alarm bells. As for the inclement weather, this could be the result of the experiment, or Azura attempting to resist it. I'd imagine being the Daedric Prince of Dawn and Dusk, with one of her many titles being the Queen of the Night Sky, could grant her some sway over the weather, and perhaps that compounded against damage done by the eruption of the Red Mountain over a century prior, ultimately resulting in Winterhold's demise. I think this theory holds some water purely in the fact that it takes all of its aspects into consideration, but one thing's for sure, special care was made to ensure the Nord's belief that the college exclusively caused the Great Collapse, and the college's retort that they were not involved. Both seem like they at the very least aren't capturing the whole truth. But what if every account has some truth to it? From the local Nord population perspective, like with much of the rest of Skyrim, their prejudice against magic users is dominated by either their inability or unwillingness to distinguish the actions of one mage from another. Whereas the college will do this, and the deeds of Malyn from their perspective in no way reflects the intent of the College of Winterhold, nor do they accept responsibility for his madness having exiled him. As for Malyn himself, his primary research is less noteworthy than an experiment he conducted that ultimately resulted in Fort Ilinalta sinking into the lake inside a day, bearing a similarity with how much of Winterhold fell into the Sea of Ghosts in a similar time frame. And then there are the supposed complications to the island as implicated by Malyn, being driven to madness both by Daedra and his own need for self-preservation. He could en masse disregard the lives of others rather casually, and his followers seem to do the same, even among their own ranks.
We can't take another villager from the surface so soon. I told you to prepare everything properly.
We can just sacrifice another disciple. Apprentice Erlen will be no great waste.
Yes, he'll do.
So there's really no limit to what the vague word disruptions could mean. As for the word island, it doesn't really feel like it's describing Fort Ilanalta, because it's not on an island, and likely never was. It is on the shoreline of a lake, but the college is, sort of. As implied by the damage to it, this bridge was not built to reconnect the College of Winterhold with Winterhold, it was already there. It spans a ravine, perhaps to a point. At least some of that always existed, in which case the word island is more likely to refer to this place than what is now known as Ilanalta's Deep. And then there's what Malyn was messing with, both while at the college and beyond. Azura's star, while the landscape around Winterhold is dominated by this massive shrine to Azura. That's not just a religious thing, it's a conduit. Azura has influence here. As for symbolism, perhaps the mysterious cause for the Great Collapse has been right in front of the people of Winterhold all along. And with that, I'm going to conclude this video here. I'm sure there are plenty of other theories, and I'd like you to let me know about those down in the comments section. I'd also like to say that I'm sure the theory I presented has its flaws, its biggest being that it's largely based on conjecture, the other being there are definite logic leaps in it, but in a game, the information is confined. Sometimes that's the best we can ask for. But I'd like to know your theories down in the comments section as well, whether they be simple, natural disasters, or more encompassing fascinating catastrophes. Regardless, I thank you all for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, and all that wonderful stuff. It would be massively appreciated. Maybe join us on our Discord server. It's quite a small, confined, friendly place, and I'm hoping to keep it that way. So, if you use the QR code on screen now, you can reap the rewards of sticking my ramblings out to the end, and join me in more ramblings. I also realised the previous link expired. I apologise, this one should work, and if it doesn't I'll be very upset. Either way, with any luck, I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point, but until next time, please take care, and goodbye.